Welcome back, shining stars. Oh, did you see that? A bee just flew right by my head. Hopefully he won't come back because we have got to get busy reading chapter 49 of The Tale of Despero. And this chapter is going to talk about a character we haven't seen in quite some time. This chapter is called, What Do You Want, Miggery Sow? If you remember, the last time we were together, Botticelli was leading Despero down into the dungeon by his tail, remember? And they got down into the dungeon and they saw something crazy. They saw light. Not something you expect to see in a dungeon. Let's see what happens next. Again, reader, we must go backward before we go forward. We must consider for a moment what had occurred with the rat and the serving girl and the princess down in the dungeon before Despero made his way to them. What happened was this. Roscuro led the Pea and Mig deep into the dungeon to a hidden chamber, and there he directed Mig to put the princess in chains. "Gosh," she said, "she's gonna have a hard time learning her lessons if she's all chained up like." "Do as I say," said Roscuro. "Maybe," said Mig. "Maybe before I lock her up, her and me could switch outfits so we could start in already with her being me and me being a princess." Remember, that's what Miggery wanted, was to be a princess. "Oh, yes, certainly," said Roscuro. "A wonderful idea, Miss Miggery. Princess, take off your crown and give it to the serving girl." "Oh, yes." The Pea sighed and took off her crown and handed it to Mig, and Mig put it on, and it slid immediately right down her small head and came to rest quite painfully on her poor, abused ears. Remember, her ears were like cauliflower because her dad used to hit them all the time. "It's a biggish thing," she said, "and painful like." "Well, well," said Roscuro. "How do I look?" Mig asked, smiling at him. Do you think he's going to say something nice? Probably not. "You look ridiculous," said Roscuro. "Laughable." Mig stood, blinking back tears. You mean I don't look like a princess?" she said to the rat. "I mean," said Roscuro, "that you will never look like a princess, no matter how big a crown you put on your tiny little head. You look exactly like the fool you are and always will be. Now, make yourself useful and chain the princess up. Dress-up time is over." Mig sniffed and wiped at her eyes and then bent to look at the pile of chains and locks on the floor. "And now, princess," he said, "I'm afraid that the time for your truth has arrived. I will now tell you what your future holds. As you consigned me to darkness, so I consign you to a life spent in the dungeon." Mig looked up. "Well, ain't she going upstairs to be a servant maid?" "No," said Roscuro. "Ain't I going to be a princess?" "No," said Roscuro. "But I want to be a princess." "No one cares what you want," said Roscuro. As you know, reader, Miggery Sow had heard this sentiment expressed many times in her short life. But now, in the dungeon, it hit her full force. The rat was right. No one cared what she wanted. No one had ever cared. And perhaps worst of all, no one would ever care. "I want!" cried Mig. "Shh," said the princess. "Shut up," said the rat. "I want!" sobbed Mig. "I want! I want!" "What do you want, Mig?" the princess asked softly. Shouted Mig. "What do you want, Miggery Sow?" the princess shouted. "Don't ask her that," said Roscuro. "Shut up! Shut up!" But it was too late. The words had been said. The question at last had been asked. The world stopped spinning and all of creation held its breath. waiting to hear what it was that Miggery Sow wanted. "I want," said Mig. "Yes," said the pea. "I want my ma," cried Mig into the silent, waiting world. "I want my ma." "Oh," said the princess, and she held out her hand to Mig. Mig took hold of it. "I want my mother too," said the princess softly, and she squeezed Mig's hand. "Stop it," said Roscuro. "Chain her up! Chain her up!" "Gaw," said Mig. "I ain't gonna do it. You can't make me do it. I got the knife now, don't I?" And she took the knife and held it up. Look, there's a picture. Who do you see in the picture? You see the princess and Mig and Roscuro the rat. What do you see? Despero? I don't see Despero in that picture. Maybe he's coming. "If you have any sense at all," said Roscuro, "and I heartily doubt that you do, you will not use that instrument on me. Without me, you will never find your way out of this dungeon, and you will starve to death here, or worse." "Gaw," said Mig. "Then lead us out now, or I will chop you up into bits." "No," said Roscuro. "The princess shall stay here in the darkness, and you, Mig, will stay with me." "But I want to go upstairs," said Mig. That's the princess. I had the wrong voice. "I'm afraid we're stuck here, Mig," said the princess, "unless the rat has a change of heart and decides to lead us out." "There will be no change of heart," said Roscuro. "None." "Gaw," said Mig. She lowered the knife. And so the rat and the princess and the serving girl sat together in the dungeon as, outside the castle, the sun rose and moved through the sky and sank to the earth again, and night fell. They sat together until the candle had burned out and another one had to be lit. They sat together in the dungeon. They sat and sat. And reader, truthfully, they might be sitting there still if a mouse had not arrived. Despero's coming to save the day. Come back next time and see what happens.